She cheated with his best friend. Then she lost everything. I want to tell you something I've never really said out loud to anyone. Not because it still hurts, but because I think a lot of you need to hear how this story ends before you hear how it began. My name is Ryan, and about 2 years ago, I came home early from work with a bouquet of white tulips for the woman I was 3 months away from proposing to. I never got to give them to her. I stopped at the florist on 5th Avenue on the way home. The woman behind the counter smiled at me and said, "Lucky girl." I smiled back. I believed her. I had no reason not to. The apartment was on the 4th floor of a building on Meridian Avenue in Columbus, Ohio. When I stepped off the elevator, I could already smell Ashley's candle through the door. She always kept one burning near the window, something called warm cotton, which I had always thought was a ridiculous name for a smell, but had never once said so because she loved it. I unlocked the door. I stepped inside, and the first thing I saw was Derek's jacket on my couch. Dark navy. Expensive. The jacket I had talked him into buying 6 months earlier at the mall, because I told him it made him look less like he was trying too hard. That jacket was sitting on my couch like it belonged there. Like it had always been there. Like I was the one who didn't belong. I stood in my kitchen for 22 seconds. I counted them later when I was trying to understand what my body had done while my mind went completely offline. I set the tulips down on the counter. I did not throw them. I did not slam them or rip the petals off one by one the way part of me wanted to. I just set them down very carefully, like they were fragile. Like I was fragile. The bedroom door was not fully closed. The sounds coming from behind it were not ambiguous. There was no story I could tell myself. No explanation that would have made Derek's jacket Derek's shoes, and those sounds add up to anything other than exactly what they were. I walked back to the front door. I picked up my keys from the hook I had installed myself on a Sunday afternoon 8 months earlier, while Ashley held the level and told me it was crooked 3 times before I got it right. I opened the door. I stepped into the hallway. I pulled the door shut behind me with a soft click that felt, in that empty corridor, like the loudest thing I had ever heard in my life. I rode the elevator down 4 floors, watching my own face in the brushed steel doors. Pale, jaw set, eyes dry in a way that scared me a little. I sat in my car for 40 minutes without starting the engine. Someone walked past with a dog. A kid on a bicycle cut through the lot and disappeared around the corner. The world just kept going like nothing had happened, which seemed completely insane to me. My phone buzzed 11 times. I watched the screen light up and go dark without touching it. When I finally looked, there were 9 missed calls from Ashley and 1 text from Derek. 20 years of friendship. 8 words. "Bro, I'm sorry. It just happened." I read it once. Put my phone face down on the passenger seat. Started the engine. And drove. Before we go any further, drop a comment right now with your country and what time it is where you're watching. Whether it's sunrise in Belgium, midnight in Nairobi, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France. I want to know. Don't just sit back. Tell me where in the world you are. Now, let's keep going. I want to take you back to before that night, because you need to understand who I was before all of this to understand what happened after. I was 27 years old. I worked as a logistics coordinator at a shipping company called Hartwell Distribution in Columbus. Not a glamorous job. Not the kind of thing you lead with at parties. But I respected what it was, a step in a plan. I have always been a plan guy. I kept a small black notebook on my nightstand. Every Sunday night, I would write 3 things I wanted to accomplish that week, 3 things I was grateful for, and 1 thing I needed to stop avoiding. I'd been doing that since I was 19, when my mother sat me down 2 weeks before her cancer diagnosis and said, "Ryan, the world will not organize itself for you. You have to decide what you're building." I never stopped. I had met Ashley Crane at a birthday party for a mutual friend named Donovan, in a backyard in Westerville with string lights and a cooler full of bad beer. She was standing near the back fence talking to nobody, holding a cup she wasn't drinking from, looking like she was performing the act of enjoying herself rather than actually doing it. I found that deeply relatable. I walked over and said, "You look like you're calculating how much longer you have to stay before it's socially acceptable to leave." She turned and looked at me with this expression I spent 3 years trying to describe to people and never quite got right, like she was deciding something about me in real time. Then she laughed. 20 minutes later, we were sitting on the back steps talking about our mothers, our jobs, our fears. I drove her home at midnight. She texted me at 12:43 a.m. "I'm glad Donovan has bad taste in beer." And Derek Haynes had been my best friend since the 4th grade. We had both stolen the same book from the school library, a battered mystery novel about a boy detective, and neither of us had returned it. We laughed about that for 20 years. Derek was the kind of person who filled every room he walked into, who remembered every birthday, who showed up with food when things were bad and music when things were good. He was charming in a way that made people feel chosen, like his attention was a gift he was giving specifically to you. I always knew Derek was like that with everyone. I just never thought it would extend to Ashley. By the time Ashley and I had been together for a year, we were sharing the apartment on Meridian Avenue. I had mapped out the next 4 years in my black notebook. Certification, promotion, enough saved for a down payment on a house, a ring. I showed Ashley the page once. She read it quietly and then looked up at me and said, "You're going to do all of this?" Not like a question, like a fact. I loved her more in that moment than at any point before it. The ring was a solitaire. I had picked it out 8 months before that Friday and put it on layaway at a jeweler on High Street called Kowalski's. I was 3 months away from having it paid off. I had rehearsed the proposal 40 or 50 times in my head, on the commute, in the shower, the Italian place on Front Street, the table where we had our first real date, the one where she got marinara on her white blouse and laughed instead of caring. I had already called the restaurant to ask about the table. I had a plan. I was 3 months from executing it. And then I came home with white tulips, and the plan became something else entirely. Here is something nobody talks about enough. There's a specific kind of grief that comes from losing a best friend that does not have the same cultural script as a breakup. When a relationship ends, people know what to say. They bring wine. They tell you that you deserve better, and that time heals. But when the person you lose is the one you would have called in the first place, the one who was supposed to be sitting across from you with that wine, there's no script. There's just a silence where a voice used to be. That night in my car, I barely thought about Ashley. I thought about Derek.